The rich aroma of morning coffee filled the sleek modern kitchen of a suburban home in Austin, Texas. But for Sophia Bennett, the familiar scent didn't bring comfort. It made her stomach twist in a way she couldn't ignore. She sat at the kitchen island, eyes fixed on the steaming cup of coffee her husband, Ethan, had just placed in front of her. 3 years of marriage, and she never imagined a day would come when she'd question the man who once vowed to protect her. But the past few months have changed everything. The relentless nausea, the sudden dizzy spells, the unexplained hospital visits, all piling up like warning signs she could no longer dismiss. At first, she chalked it up to work stress or food sensitivities. But then, she started noticing a pattern. It only happened after meals or drinks prepared by Ethan or her sister-in-law, Madison. Madison sat across from her, draped in an expensive knit sweater, a smirk playing at the corner of her lips. "Ethan's really been perfecting his brewing skills," she remarked, lazily stirring her own cup. "All that effort just for you, Sophia." There was something unsettling in Madison's tone. Sophia couldn't tell if it was a casual tease or a veiled warning. Either way, it sent a chill down her spine. Ethan smiled, but there was something off in his expression. "I know you love French press, so I tried a new technique." Sophia lifted the cup but didn't drink. Instead, she inhaled. A strange scent lingered beneath the coffee's rich aroma, a faint metallic tinge, something that didn't belong. Her heart clenched. She couldn't ignore the signs any longer. She forced a smile, setting the cup down. "That's so thoughtful of you," she said softly. But inside, she was bracing herself because today she would find out the truth. Sophia slowly turned the coffee cup in her hands, willing her fingers to stay steady. She could feel Madison's gaze locked onto her, as if waiting for something to happen. Across the table, Ethan tapped his fingers lightly against the wood, a nervous habit of his, one that only surfaced when he was under pressure. She thought back to the last time she had fallen ill, a crippling stomachache after dinner at Madison's house, the night before her biggest presentation with a major corporate client. The doctors had found nothing unusual, dismissing it as stress or poor diet. But now, as she sat in front of a steaming cup of coffee, with Ethan and Madison watching her intently, Sophia knew that her illness had been anything but coincidental. She decided to take a risk. With a relaxed expression, she raised the cup to her lips, then suddenly froze, her face lighting up as if she had just remembered something. "Oh, I completely forgot. My boss texted me this morning. I need to call them back," she said, fumbling in her purse for her phone. As she stood, she made a calculated misstep, bumping the table just enough to jostle the cups. In a single smooth motion, she swapped hers with Madison's before anyone could notice. "Oops, I'm so clumsy," she murmured with a small, apologetic smile. Madison barely reacted, simply shrugging before lifting the cup to her lips and taking slow, savoring sips. Nearly 2 minutes passed. Her expression shifted. Her lips paled, her fingers dug into the table as if trying to steady herself. "Ethan?" Madison's voice came out weak, almost a whisper. Her eyes widened in sheer horror. "Something's wrong." Ethan jumped to his feet, his face draining of color. "Madison, what's happening?" He dropped to his knees beside her, his hands gripping her shoulders as panic set in. It wasn't supposed to be." His voice trailed off, realization dawning too late. Sophia stood still, her heart pounding, but her voice remained calm. "You were about to say, it wasn't supposed to be her cup, right, Ethan?" For a moment, the kitchen was filled with nothing but the ragged breathing of Madison and the stunned silence of Ethan. But for Sophia, the truth had never been clearer. Madison slumped forward onto the table, one hand clutching her throat as if trying to stop the nausea from overtaking her. She gasped for air, her wide eyes filled with terror. Ethan dropped to his knees beside her, his hands trembling as he placed them on her back. "Madison? Are you okay?" His voice cracked with panic. Sophia folded her arms, watching the scene unfold with detached amusement. "Looks like she drank something unpleasant," she said, her tone slow, deliberate, laced with just the right amount of irony. Madison struggled to speak, but only broken, wheezing breaths escaped her lips. Ethan's head snapped towards Sophia, suspicion and fear flashing in his eyes. "What did you do?" he demanded, his voice shaking. Sophia arched a brow, her expression unbothered. "What do you think I did?" "All I did was switch our cups. If something's wrong, then maybe it shouldn't have been in my cup to begin with." A heavy silence filled the kitchen. Ethan blinked rapidly, swallowing hard. Madison tried to push herself up, but her legs buckled beneath her. Sophia calmly pulled out her phone and dialed. "I need an ambulance at 2948 Oak Ridge Drive," she said, her voice steady. "My sister-in-law is showing signs of poisoning." Ethan's face was drained of colour, his hands clenched into fists so tightly that his knuckles turned white. "Sophia, you don't understand. This isn't what you think." She let out a small, humourless laugh, tilting her head slightly as she met his gaze. "Then go ahead, explain it to me. Why did the coffee you specifically made for me just put Madison in this state?" His mouth opened, but no words came out. The flicker of panic in his eyes was all the confirmation she needed. From a distance, the wail of approaching sirens shattered the thick tension in the air. Madison weakly lifted her head, her eyes filled with sheer horror as they met Sophia's. "You switched the cups," she croaked, her voice barely above a whisper. Sophia leaned in slightly, her eyes cold and unwavering. "That's right. And I know everything you two have done." Ethan stared at her, realizing sinking in. This was a checkmate. She was no longer the naive, trusting wife he could manipulate. The front door burst open as paramedics and police officers flooded the house. Madison was hoisted onto a stretcher, while Ethan stood frozen, his face void of any remaining confidence. As an officer stepped toward her, Sophia took a deep breath and handed over her phone. "This is all the evidence you need. Texts, recordings, everything that proves they were trying to poison me." Ethan's jaw tightened, his lips pressing into a thin line. He had no more excuses. No way out. He knew. It was over. Sophia was never the suspicious type. She trusted people, maybe too much. But as the pieces of the puzzle started falling into place, she realized she had been blind to the truth about Ethan and Madison for far too long. Her suspicions weren't just about the mysterious illnesses that followed every meal or drink prepared by them. It was the small things, the details that didn't add up in daily life. It all started 3 months ago on a quiet morning when she found a receipt tucked inside the pocket of Ethan's coat while doing laundry. It was for an expensive gold necklace from a high-end jewelry store downtown. The date on it? The same evening Ethan had claimed he was stuck in a long business meeting. At first, Sophia wanted to believe it was a surprise gift for her. But as the weeks passed and no jewelry box appeared, doubt began creeping in. Then, at a family gathering, she spotted Madison walking into the room, a delicate gold necklace glinting under the light, the exact design from the receipt. She recognized every detail, every tiny stone set in its place. Her stomach sank, but she said nothing. She needed more proof. From that day on, she started watching them closely, the lingering glances when they thought she wasn't looking. The casual, almost subconscious touches that didn't seem so innocent anymore. The late-night texts Ethan received, texts he would always brush off when she asked. One night when Ethan was in the shower, Sophia picked up his phone. He had a passcode, but she knew her husband's habits well. A few guesses later, the screen unlocked. And there it was. Madison. Does she suspect anything? Ethan. No, she trusts me completely. Madison. Good, just a few more weeks. Once this is over, everything will be ours. Sophia felt like the air had been knocked out of her lungs. This wasn't just an affair. They were plotting against her. But why? The answer came when she dug into Ethan's financial records. He was drowning in debt, more than she ever imagined. His company was in trouble, and if they divorced, he'd lose nearly everything. After all, Sophia was the primary earner. But if she were to die, If she suddenly fell ill and never recovered, Ethan would inherit everything. It all made sense now. This wasn't just betrayal, it was premeditated. From that moment, Sophia started gathering evidence. She saved messages, secretly recorded their hushed conversations. She even sent a strand of her hair to an independent lab for toxin screening. The results confirmed her worst fears. Her body had traces of a rare compound used in pharmaceutical research. She had everything she needed, but she couldn't confront them directly. They would deny it, cover their tracks. She had to make them expose themselves. And so this morning, when Ethan handed her the special cup of coffee he had so carefully prepared, Sophia knew the game was about to end. She took a deep breath, her fingers tightening around her phone as she handed it to the officer in front of her. The screen was still lit, displaying the damning text messages between Ethan and Madison. "We just need to weaken her. If she's too sick to work, everything will belong to us." Reading those words again made the fury rise in her chest. It wasn't just betrayal. They had deliberately poisoned her, little by little stripping away her strength, her clarity, her position, the very life she had built for herself. And when they pushed too far, when Madison drank what was meant for her, their entire plan came crashing down. At the hospital, the doctors confirmed what Sophia already knew. Madison had ingested a rare compound, the same one that had put Sophia in bed for weeks. Standing outside the ICU, she watched through the glass as Madison lay motionless, weaker than ever. This time, she was the one who had been taken down. Sophia didn't feel satisfied. She didn't feel triumph. She just felt relieved, because finally justice had been served. The gavel struck the judge's bench, the sharp crack echoing through the hushed courtroom. All eyes turned toward the judge as he delivered the final verdict. Defendants Ethan Bennett and Madison Clark, this court finds you guilty of conspiracy to commit murder and attempted manslaughter. Sentencing will proceed in accordance with the law. Sophia remained still, feeling her heartbeat slow as the weight of the moment settled over her. Across the room, Ethan stood frozen, his face ashen. Madison, once so arrogant and self-assured, now sat slumped at the defense table, her eyes vacant, lips pressed into a tight line. Her attorney had done his job flawlessly. The text messages, the meticulously crafted plan to poison her little by little, weakening her, stripping away her control at work, allowing Madison to slide seamlessly into her place, both professionally and personally. All of it had been laid bare before the court. There were no more excuses, no more lies to hide behind. Medical experts had testified that the poison wasn't accidental. It wasn't a mishap in the kitchen. It had been carefully administered over months, in doses designed not to kill her outright, but to erode her strength, her confidence, her very sense of self. They had nearly succeeded, but not quite. Ethan turned his head, his expression a mix of disbelief and quiet desperation. Maybe he had convinced himself that he would never get caught. Maybe he truly believed that Sophia would always be the trusting, oblivious wife who wouldn't dare look too closely. He was wrong. Sophia didn't smile. There was no sense of triumph, no lingering satisfaction, just a deep, overwhelming relief. She had fought. She had uncovered the truth. And in the end, justice had prevailed. As she stepped outside the courthouse, the warm sunlight bathed her face. For the first time in months, she felt truly free. Ethan and Madison were nothing more than a chapter she had finally closed. And ahead of her, a future untouched by betrayal. 1 year later, Sophia stood on stage at the annual business conference in Austin, Texas, in front of hundreds of executives and industry leaders. The bright stage lights illuminated her, but she no longer felt the pressure or anxiety they once brought. Every word she spoke was strong, steady, and filled with confidence because she had survived the darkest days of her life and emerged stronger than ever. Success, she said, her voice unwavering, isn't just about talent or opportunity. It's about resilience. It's about the ability to rise after every fall, to face the truth, no matter how painful it may be. Applause rippled through the audience, but Sophia only smiled. Her eyes drifted toward the front row, where her colleagues, friends, and trusted partners sat. These were the people who had supported her through the toughest times, the ones who reminded her that her worth was never tied to a marriage or a relationship. The major contract that Madison had schemed to steal was now the very foundation of Sophia's company's success. One deal led to another, not because of luck, but because of her perseverance, determination, and the reputation she had built through sheer hard work. Of course, there were nights when her thoughts wandered back to the past, to Ethan, to Madison, to the months she had been poisoned, not just physically but emotionally, by betrayal. But when she looked at her life now, she knew true victory didn't come from revenge. It came from rising above. As she stepped off the stage, a notification lit up her phone, an email. Another contract, an even bigger opportunity than she had ever imagined. Sophia took a deep breath and smiled. The past no longer held power over her. She had won, not by destroying those who wronged her, but by thriving despite them. And that was the greatest revenge of all. Thank you for following the story until the very end. If you admire Sophia's incredible journey of strength and resilience, show your support by leaving a number 1 in the comments. If you enjoy deep, emotional, and meaningful stories like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new update. Your support is the motivation that drives us to keep bringing you powerful stories. Once again, thank you for being here, and see you in the next story.